I'm just trying to get started right away. So I'm doing something pretty crazy right now. Have y'all ever done anything crazy in your life? Like willingly did something crazy? Yeah, y'all want to know what I'm willingly doing? I signed up for a triathlon. Yeah. By all of that noise, that means none of them have done it, Pastor Alex. Because there's nothing fun about this race at all. At all. And you're like, well, why are you doing this? Because I put my foot in my mouth? Here's how the story goes. 3 years ago, Pastor Alex came on staff here, and I said, man, if you're going to hang out with me, I remember saying these words, if you're going to hang out with me, we're going to do crazy things. I said it, and now I'm eating my own words. And what I did with him is I said, in 10 days, this is what I said, follow that statement. In 10 days, there's a half marathon running right downtown. You want to get to know the downtown where we're at? We're going to run a half marathon, and we're going to pray. This is what we did. We prayed every mile around the city. I said, we're going to get involved. We're going to know what's going on. And he said yes. So January comes this year, and I get a phone call from Pastor Alex. Something wasn't right about this phone call. He was all giddy on this phone call. I was like, man, you're scheming. Like there's something not okay. And he said, hey, remember when you asked me to run that half marathon? And you said, if we're going to hang out, we're going to do something crazy? And I went, oh no. He said, well, I got an idea. And you can't say no. He came over, him and Megan came over and her family came over to my parents' house. We sat and had dinner very shortly after that, and we sat to have discussions about this thing. And what he told me then is he was like, we're going to do a triathlon. And at this point, I realized there was no retreat. I don't want to do a triathlon. I don't have this like, I want to accomplish the world. He's got goals. He wants to go to Kona and do the top one in 10 years. I don't have that, guys. Like, I don't have that drive in the back of me to do all this. All I see is time, effort, energy, and ain't nobody got a good combination of all three. So I said yes. And so for some time we've been training. Well, we're 3 weeks out. One day under 3 weeks. We're 3 weeks out, and man, I'm just glad to get there. People are like, man, are you excited? Are you ready? I'll be ready when I cross that finish line. To go, yeah, I'm done. Well, 2 weeks ago, we had to get on a bike. So for a triathlon, it's 3 sports. It's swim, it's bike, it's run. I don't do any of those well at all, okay? Well, we had to get on a bike, and not just like one of your cool bikes you can buy, not a beach cruiser that you can go and rent down at Pismo and ride around. No. This is like a real bike. For a real biker, like I'm not. They understand what I'm talking about. There's gears that are involved, and the gears are necessary to climb and to ascend. I knew nothing of that when I was riding my 10-speed mountain bike when I was a kid. Like, that wasn't anything they taught me. They just had pedal and balance. Well, riding a bike. We go up to Bass Lake because that's where we're doing the course, right? So we go up to Bass Lake, and I at this point decide I'm not going to suffer alone. So I did what any good brother would do, and I called my brother, and I said, if I'm doing a triathlon, you're doing a triathlon. He's like, yes, brother bonding time. And honestly, my pride was not about brother bonding time. I just needed somebody that I would be right ahead of in the finish line just to make me feel better. Can I just be honest? And if you're watching, James, it's the truth. And so we've been training, and he lives out of town, so I called him, hey, you got to get here. We got to go up the mountain. We got to at least know what we're doing. So we went up to the mountain a couple weeks ago, and we went to Bass Lake, and Alex is there, and James is there, and I'm there, and we get out of the car. And I noticed something. We got our bikes off of the car. I noticed that the gears are starting to, like, slip. They're not shifting well, but I'm like, man, maybe it's just something. I didn't know. I don't know nothing about bikes. So I said, I'll just get on it and ride. Bad idea. So we get out of Bass Lake, we get up on this mountain, hardest hill on the ride, get up, and it's the first hill, like to start out of the parking lot. And we're getting out of the parking lot, and we get to the top of the hill, and Alex is sitting there waiting for us, and then he sees James and I come to the top of the hill, and he goes, all right, guys, see you later, and he's gone. No, when I say gone, like I didn't see him the rest of the day. Did I see you the rest of the day, Alex? No, he was so gone, he was calling me at the bottom of the mountain back home like, hey, how was your ride? I'm still up here. Great friend, right? So it's me and my brother. and neither of us know what we're doing. And so we're up there. We think we look cool, though. We got the suits, the helmets, the whatever. Doesn't help at all. So then I'm up there and about 3 miles into a 24-mile bike ride, 3 miles in, and my gear sticks. Like it doesn't, he's laughing because he knows exactly what I'm talking about. He's the pro, I'm not. Gear sticks. And I'm like, oh no. So I did what any person would do in that moment. You would call the experienced one. So who did I call? I called Pastor Alex. He didn't answer at all. No help, no nothing. He called me down the mountain. Hey, I'm just calling you back. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay now. I figured it out. And I ended up sticking. Yeah, I'm making him feel bad for this. I ended up getting stuck. My brother caught up to me because we were only 3 miles in, and I did not know what to do. I found myself with my brother, inexperienced, in a moment where my gears were stuck, and I literally couldn't go forward. Have any of you ever felt like that? On the side of a mountain or on the side of the road, and you're just stuck. And no, I don't mean an actual road. I mean the road of life. That you're just stuck, not knowing how to move forward. You're in a place outside of your natural habitat. You're in a foreign area. You're trying to do things. You're trying to do better for yourself. You're trying to grow. You're trying to do this thing of walking a Christian life and following Jesus. And you find yourself in a moment in life that you're stuck. What do you do when you're stuck? That's what I want to talk about today. How do we get unstuck when we're stuck on the side of the road? Matthew chapter 20, verse 29 tells us a story of 2 men, just like me and my brother, 2 men that were stuck on the side of the road. Matthew chapter 20, verse 29 and 30 say this. As Jesus and his disciples were leaving Jericho. Let me give you a pause for a second. Jericho, let's talk about Jericho. Jericho's word means a couple different things, but one of the things that it means is fragrance. Fragrance in the realm of worship. It was a place where people would go to worship because of what God had done. And this text tells me that Jesus and his disciples were leaving Jericho. They were leaving the place of worship. They were leaving a city known by its worship, and going somewhere else. You know, I find myself not stuck when I'm in church. It's when I'm leaving church that I find myself stuck. It's when I'm going through normal habits and routines in life that I get stuck. Not in church, not in the places of worship. You know, that's why we come back, because we're like, at least in service, I'll be okay. And then we get outside and we quickly are reminded, because of our circumstances and our relationships and so on that's going on in our life, that we get stuck. And it says that Jesus and his disciples were leaving the place of worship. They were leaving that and going somewhere else. It means there's more than just what we do on Sundays. That Jesus wants to engage in our life more than just what goes on at 11 o'clock on YouTube or in a building. He wants to take us from the places of worship on a journey, because he took his disciples with him. They were going somewhere, and it says Jesus and his disciples were leaving Jericho, and what happened? A large crowd followed him. Jesus had followers before you even knew what TikTok was. A large following. Everywhere he went, a large following. And I love the descriptives here. There was Jesus, disciples, and a crowd. A group of people that were with him, weren't with him, were on his side, not on his side, were watchers and seekers, and all of these people, that was the crowd. Some of you are here and you don't know, am I on Jesus' side? Am I not on Jesus' side? Am I a disciple? Am I not? Do I follow him? Do I not? But you're here today. You fall in that crowd category. There's always people that are welcome to follow Jesus, even if you're not there. I heard a pastor once say, it's okay to belong before you believe. Jesus allowed followers that weren't disciples to walk with him along the journey, because that's just the truth. It's okay to belong to a group of people before you actually believe it, because that's a part of the process. And so Jesus had a large crowd of people who were following him, and here's what it says in verse 30. And two, everyone say two blind men were sitting by the side of the road. They were stuck. How do I know that? Because they were blind. They were on a road. They didn't know which way to go. They were stuck. 2 blind men. Not one healthy and one blind. 2 blind men. 2 blind men ain't gonna get themselves anywhere together without the help of an outsider. 2 blind men stuck, side of the road. How do I know that? They were sitting by the side of the road. These 2 blind men. Why would they be on the outside of the city? Because that's what it says. It says that they're on the outside of the city. As Jesus and his disciples and this crowd were leaving Jericho, leaving outside, there was 2 blind men. 2 blind men on the outside of the city. Why were they there? Because they were blind. Because that's what culture would do at that point. They'd send blind people and lame people and sick people to the outside of the city. They didn't want them in their city. You didn't belong. You aren't perfected. You aren't whole. So we're going to shift you on the outside of the city. They were blind. That was their ailment. They were blind. What does it mean to be blind? I love it. You guys are a whole lot smarter than first service. It's not a trick question. It means that you can't see. These 2 men could not see. And because they could not see, they were separated from the city and sent outside because they couldn't see. You know, the text doesn't really tell me a whole lot about their blindness, though. You know, I can assume when I read the text, which is scary, I can assume that the text, when they say that they're blind, that they were completely blind. And they've probably been blind since birth, because we've heard that in the text. There's multiple stories that go on in the text that tell us that there was a man who was born blind from birth, and Jesus healed him. But this story talks about 2 men and does not give me that descriptor. It does not tell me how long they've had their blindness. It doesn't give me a term of length for how sick they were or how blind they were. It just says that they were blind. I don't know about you, when I start to think about the problems in my own life, in my own blind spots, the things in my life that I can't see, one of the things that is common for me is to look at the people next to me and acknowledge, have I been dealing with this longer or shorter than they have? We find ourselves oftentimes comparing ourselves to those that are around us. And in the terms of our sickness and the length of time, we can very easily find ourselves, well, God, you don't understand. I've been dealing with this all of my life. Or we can turn to God and say, God, I've been dealing with this for 2 weeks. And oftentimes we think one is worse than the other. The one ailment, because of their term that they've dealt with it, is worse than the other. But that's not what this story tells me. This story plainly says that there were 2 blind men who were about to encounter Jesus. Can I tell you, it does not matter how long that you've been dealing with the problems that you've been dealing with it. Whether you've been dealing with it all your life or you've been dealing with it for just a month, God isn't concerned about the length of time you've been dealing with it. He's concerned about the moment of your miracle. And if I look at these 2 blind men, it doesn't give me descriptives of their term of length that they had their ailment, and it doesn't tell me how deep their ailment was. And when we talk about blind, they can be completely blind, or you can be sort of blind. How many of y'all wear glasses? Now I'm gonna ask this. How many of y'all, if you take your glasses off, are blind? There's degrees of blindness, right? We can see without them, we can kind of see better with them, or there's complete blindness. The story does not tell me that these men were completely blind or partially blind. It just throws me in a category that they were blind. That means I don't know if these guys could see partially, if they could see almost all the way, or if they couldn't see at all. Which means to tell me that this probably connects to us a whole lot more than we realize. Because the thing about those of you that are wearing glasses or contacts, you can see better with your glasses on. but you can't see perfectly. You can see better, but you're not whole. And these two blind men had an ailment of blindness that they couldn't see. And so often do you and I get caught up in how we compare to others that we just say, well, my vision is better than those that are next to me. My relationship may not be well, but it's better. My situation at home may not be perfect, but it's better. And we find ourselves excusing our own ailments, our own problems, the situations in our own life by comparing them to the people next to us. Well, at least I'm not them. At least I don't have that bad of a problem. But the Bible tells me here that there was two blind men, which means two men that had problems, and both men needed a solution. You know, it's funny because when we go to the doctor, right, to get your eyes checked, you don't go to the doctor and ask what your family's prescription is. No? How do you get your prescription? By looking at something that doesn't change, right? An eye chart. They put an eye chart on the wall. You get to a determined distance that everybody is at, and they ask you to read letters based on that distance that everybody reads it from, and then they determine not everybody's prescription, but your prescription. Because you look at a chart that's immovable. What would happen if we stopped living our life based on other people's prescriptions, what they prescribe to us to fix our own ailments and our own problems and our own concerns and our own circumstances, and started looking at a chart that never changes? Started looking from a distance that would never move. And what I'm talking about is what would happen if you spent your life not comparing whether you could see better than the person next to you, if your life is better conditioned than the person that you're running next to you, and started comparing yourself to a chart that doesn't change. Started asking yourself, can I see the letters? Can I see the letters? And here's the reality. The letters aren't just black and white. Can I tell you that on the chart? If you look at a doctor's chart, an optometrist's chart, they have black letters on a white chart, and they also have red letters. Because there's times in our moment where we've got to be able to depict what the red letters mean for our life, what the black letters mean for our life, that then start to give us a prescription. Because the way you see this doesn't change the chart. The way you see the chart changes you. And these two blind men, we don't know how long they've been dealing with it, and we don't know how deep their issue was. We just know that they have issues. And can I just acknowledge today that you need to start realizing that you've got issues? I've got issues. Or I'll say it this way, you may not be blind, but you've got some blind spots. You know, blind spots, areas in your life that you can't see. Areas in your life that you need others to start to help you see. Areas in your life where you need the Holy Spirit to start to speak to you in ways that He hasn't spoken to you. Because the devil's goal in life is to blind you, make you unaware of what you can't see. How do I know that? 2 Corinthians 4:4. 2 Corinthians 4:4 says this, that the God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. The God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers. Why do I start seeing miracles done by Jesus with blind men? Because the goal of the devil is to convince you of what you can't see. He's trying to blind you, create more blind spots around you than you would realize, because we're broken, we're blind. These men represent us. You know, I was talking to Pastor Alex today, and there's two men in this story. And I go, when I speak, I always ask God, who am I preaching to? And I told him today I'm really wrestling because I'm preaching to people that have been in the church for as long as I've been in the church. And I'm preaching to somebody that just came in today. There's two different categories of people. But as I looked at this story, there's two blind men. Because oftentimes we think, because we've been on the road longer than others, that we're more put together than the others that are joining us on the side of the road. But the reality is, we're all a little blind. We've all got a little bit of blind spots. We all need somebody to help us out. We all need God to intervene on our behalf. And so can I just tell you, those that have been around, it's okay if you've been here for 25 years and you still got some blind spots. Let's just acknowledge them. And if you're here for the first time, it's okay to acknowledge that you're not sure what's going on, but you know that there's areas in your life that you can't see. Today, we're gonna figure out how to get unstuck. There's two men, blind, on the side of the road, stuck. And Jesus is walking by. Jesus is walking by. But they're on the outside of town. Why would they be on the outside of town, though? Because they were blind. I'll give you 3 reasons why they were on the outside of town. Not just give you a better description than just that they were blind, they were broken. Society noticed their ailment, and so they shifted them out. Oh, let's not judge Jericho too much, because we do this often without realizing it. That we see those people with those problems, and we want them to go over there. Oh, can we just be real in here? Oh yeah, you may not say it, but you think it when you walk out of the grocery store in your neighborhood and that person doesn't belong in your neighborhood. And so you go, they don't belong here. Because your life would be easier if you didn't have to engage with them. Jericho put them out, and so do we. Like, well, you don't know my neighborhood. That doesn't mean that you don't do it. Doesn't mean that we don't react when we see people and say, they don't belong in my safe circle. It's 2 blind men. We're broken. How do you know if you've got an ailment, though? Like if you're broken, because we often think that we're not broken and everybody else is broken. How do you know if you've got an ailment? How do you know if you're blind? Ethan, come here. Run, come on. Get your work on. Stop. Close your eyes. Spin around 3 times. Stop. You're like, what is he doing? He's just walking in circles. Just pay attention. He couldn't see. He didn't know where I was. Ethan, stand right here. Keep your eyes open. Can you find me? Can you find me? You guys notice what just happened here? He was able to see where I was, which then affected the pace at which he walked at. Because when you can't see in front of you, ever been there? You walk into a dark room, you think you know where you're going. You kind of remember what the room was like last time, and you're hoping your kids didn't leave their toys out. And so you were walking in the dark, slowly and cautiously, because you're not sure what's in front of you. But when you can see, it doesn't matter if I got stumbling blocks in front of me. It doesn't matter if toys are left out, because I can just step over because I know where I'm going. When you have an ailment, here's how we know. Your pace changes. The ailment changes your pace of life, just like it changed his. You can go sit down. And so often do we think that nobody notices our change of pace in life because of the anxiety and the depression and the fear and the worry and the relationship that you're going through, but everybody else notices that you're now not walking straight, you're walking, trying to figure out where you're going. How do you know that you've got an ailment? Your pace of life changes. Or you act like nothing is going on and you still can't see and you run into everything in front of you. Because your pace of life has changed. These blind men were kicked outside of the city because their pace of life changed in such a way that the people around them knew that they were broken. So they were broken and sent outside. They were just broken, but when you deal with broken people, they're a burden to you. I've had the opportunity, and Lodo is one of our evangelists that's here at this church, and he happens to be blind. If you haven't heard his story, him being blind, I've had the opportunity to travel across the globe with him in different ways, and there are times where I can see, he can't. So the way that we go around is he puts his hand on my shoulder, and we walk. But it changes the way that I walk. Because I no longer have to walk just by the distance, the shoulder width of one person. I've now got to be aware of somebody else that's around me. I've got to be aware of what I walk into, how I walk into a door, how I walk up an aisle, how I squeeze past people, because I don't have one person, I have two people. That's what happens when we deal with broken people, that sometimes we view them as a burden because it changes your comfortable patterns and causes you to do the unthinkable, the uncomfortable thing by paying attention to them more than you're paying attention to you. And the reason why the blind men were sitting on the outside of the city is not just because they were broken, but because they became a burden to society. The last thing, the reason why, is because they were bothering people. Because you know how a blind man would make his living? Begging. Because he couldn't see to work to create an income, and so he had to rely on those around them that could do what he couldn't do in order to survive. And so they sent them out because they became a bother, because they started asking too many people to help them in their life, to get them from point A to point B. And so the city started to see the broken people as a bother. God, forgive us. Forgive us for seeing people in our life that are broken, that we are visibly aware of their brokenness. And we have in turn in our heart said, you're broken, and helping you is a burden because now I have to take my eyes off of what I want to do in life and where I'm going and what I want to do with my family, and I got to start paying attention to you a little bit more. And you're just starting to bother me. You call me too much. You text me too much. You ask for help too much. God, forgive us. Forgive us for seeing the world that He's called us to as blind. So the reality is they're blind. The devil has blinded their minds so they can't see. Then why am I going to judge them, react to them, because they can't see, and judge them based on what I can? Because we expect people to see what we can see. But that's not always the case. See, this story tells me of two blind men who were sitting on the side of the road, and they heard Jesus sitting outside because the city wanted them out. And who comes by? Some of you have felt outcasted by your family, by society, by those in the circumstances that you're dealing with, and you feel like an outsider. You feel like somebody that's alone. You feel like nobody loves me because of your own brokenness, because of the situations that you chose or didn't choose to walk through, and nobody else is with you, and you just feel, I'm alone. I'm showing up to church alone. I'm going to work alone, and I'm just out and about. Does anybody care about me? Can I tell you who Jesus walks by? Because Jesus walked by thousands of people in Jericho, but they didn't write that down. What Jesus did is Jesus walked by two blind, broken, alone, burdened, bothersome people because He knew He had to engage with them. Can I encourage somebody today that I don't know where you're at and what you feel like, but you may feel outcasted because of everybody in your life. Jesus hasn't forgotten about you. Jesus still sees you. Jesus still wants to engage with you. He wants to change your situation. Jesus wanted to take a transitional moment and make it transformational. How do I know that? Because He was going from one city to another city. This is just a journey. This is just to get Him from here to there. And most of the time we look at our lives and we go, well, I don't want to bother Jesus because my life, I just need a little something. I just need a little change. No, Jesus is looking for every opportunity not to just transition somebody to a better life, but to transform somebody to a new life. Not to transition somebody to a better life, but to transform somebody to a new life. Where in your life do you need Jesus to make it new, not better? Because we have this concept, this cultural idea that we just need everything to be better. No, I need things to be new. I need a new mind. I need a new heart. I need new vision. I don't need better vision. I don't need better thinking. I don't need better feelings. No, I need new vision. I need a new heart. I need a new mouth. Jesus wants to do transformational things in your life, not transitional things in your life. He's not going up the scale. He wants to make your life completely different than what it was before. Two blind men sitting on the side of the road, and Jesus was walking by, and they heard. These two blind men didn't see Jesus, obviously. But they heard Him. They heard that He was passing by. I've got to imagine that they were sitting here on the side of the road for some time, And they were at the main gate, not at a side gate, not at a small road. The beggars would sit on the outside of town at the main entrance so that they could get as many people to feel bad for them, so they could have a living. That's where they would be, main gate. I've got to imagine if you couldn't see, then you would listen. You would listen to all the conversations of who's going to actually make it into the NBA playoffs, and who's going to get the buy-in, and what taco truck they need to go down, and who's coming over for dinner. They would have heard all of those conversations. I guarantee you they would have heard conversations about Jesus. The people in this city were amazed by his miracles. And people in the city were amazed that he must be the Messiah. And people in the city were probably either walking in to go see him or walking out from just seeing him. That these conversations were happening on a journey of other people's everyday life. And yet these two men were sitting on the outside of the city listening, waiting to hear somebody talk about hope. So when we see this, that they hear Jesus is coming by, we have some points in the text that tell us that they have heard about Jesus before. How do I know that? Because the text says, when they heard that Jesus was coming by, they shouted. You don't just yell at somebody that you've never heard of, that you're not sure of. They shouted. And what did they shout? They shouted, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." Lord, recognizing who he is. He's not a teacher, he is Lord. They had heard somebody talk about him being Lord. They had heard somebody tell a story about how he must be the Messiah. And then it says, "Son of David, I recognize your kingly lineage. I understand that you are like King David. I understand that you come from him." There's some authority. Pastor talked about that a couple weeks ago. There's some authority that you carry. You are Lord, and you are a kingly Lord. And then they said this, "Have mercy on us," which means that he has the opportunity to extend mercy. He has something that they need. It breaks my heart, though, to hear that this was part of the story. That they said, "Son of David, have mercy on me." You know why they would say that? They would say that because the cultural custom of that time was that if you had an ailment that was visible to others around you, that we would describe that God was punishing you or your family based on what you or your family had done. And so they hear that Jesus is Lord, that he is from a kingly lineage, that he is the Messiah possibly, and they go, "You are connected to God, have mercy on me. I am broken." It is a verbal acknowledgement of the sin within their life that they said, "I'm less than, I don't deserve this. I can't come to you, I'm not worthy," because the religious society had beat it into the mind of broken people that Jesus wants nothing to do with you. And we are not unlike Jericho. That we tell people to clean up before they get here. That we tell people by our actions that you are only whole after you get to church, after you clean up. I can only engage with you after you commit to believing these doctrinal statements. I can only engage in your life until after you've dropped everything you've done. We have reverberated the same religious mindset in our culture today that we tell broken people, "Fix yourself before you come to Jesus." And these two blind men believed that they needed to fix themselves before they came to Jesus. But yet Jesus was there and they weren't missing their moment, so they said, "Have mercy on us. Have mercy on us." And here's what happened. The next verse says, 32, and Jesus, I'm waiting for it up there, and Jesus stopped and called it. Wait. No, skip back. Go drop down, because I missed 31 and I cannot miss 31. 31 says this. In their response, the crowd rebuked them. The church, those that were following Jesus, rebuked the blind men because they weren't put together enough, because they weren't whole enough, because they weren't well enough. They were an outsider and needed to stay an outsider. So they told the blind men, "Stop talking or else we'll deal with you." There were ramifications for a sick person, an outsider, if they got too close to those that were well. This was a threat. This wasn't a passerby statement. This wasn't sarcasm. This was a threat by the crowd. Shut up, it's not about you. It's about us right now. And how often have we left our worship services and seen some broken people in our lives, and they've started to ask some questions, and we've told them, stop talking. Don't text me. I'm trying to get everything better in my life. I just need me and Jesus time before I can help you with your situation. I know your problem's important, but my problem's a whole lot more important. And we do this. And we refuse to engage in the lives of people because we don't want to miss our moment with Jesus. And so the crowd rebuked them and told them to be quiet. And what did the two blind men do? They shouted louder. Let me give you a dichotomy here. Two groups in this text. All right, I love teaching through this. I could teach through this for another hour. I'm not going to, promise. There's two groups of they in this text. There's a they that followed Jesus outside of the city, and that's the crowd and the disciples. And there's a they in verse 31 that says, but they shouted all the louder. There's a large crowd of people telling the two blind men, they, stop talking, it's not about you. Get out of here. You can't change. It's not worth it. Don't try to go down that road. There's a group of haters. There's they. And then there's two. Not 30, not 40, but two. Two that categorize themselves as a they, and they decided to shout all the louder. They decided that they needed change. They decided that they needed transformation. Here's why I point that out. You've got to listen to who they are. Who is the they that you're listening to? You want change in your life? You want something to happen in your relationship? You want circumstances to change? What voices are louder for you? Is it the people that are hating on your change, that want to tell you that you can't get over it, that you can't get anything fixed? Yeah, you may have made 1,000 mistakes in your life, but they're telling you that this one, you're just going to make another one. Are you listening to them? Well, I don't listen to them, Pastor Nate. Yeah, I just sit and I pray. No, you don't. You scroll on Facebook all the time, and you respond to every one of your haters because you think you have to define yourself. You know, I learned early on, it sounds real harsh, but I learned early on, I'm a PK. I learned people like to talk. They do, right, Pastor Rudy? And they like to talk. Some of y'all are getting real uncomfortable because I'm talking about you. They like to talk, and when I was growing up, they would say some really bad things about me. And some of them were true. And some of them weren't true. And the things that weren't true would bother me. And I learned that 2 Peter tells us this, that we would silence the ignorant talk of foolish people by doing good. You spend too much energy and focus in your life trying to debate with haters. Hear me when I say this. You will learn something. You will gain energy in life if you just dismiss haters. And I don't mean not care for, I don't mean not love, but stop trying to defend yourself. You don't need to. We live in a world that thinks everything needs to be defended right now. No, it don't. We can disagree. Cool. Love you. I'm going to keep moving. Because we spend so much of our energy not accomplishing what we should be doing and starting to fight off or ward off those that want to keep us from doing it. So you know what? They're accomplishing what they want because they've distracted you. There's a large group of people in this story that are telling these two blind men, they're sitting on the side of the road, that don't know what their pain is, don't know how long they've sat there, don't know how much they remember, if they remember what it looks like to see, and they're telling them, shut up, it's not your time. But there's a smaller group, and the group is two blind men. You don't need perfect people in your corner. You just need people in your corner. Stop trying to find the perfect person. You just need somebody that's there for you. You need somebody to link arms and arms with you. You need somebody, two blind men, they both understood what it looked like to be without vision. They both understood the necessity, the availability that it brought, the access that it brought to their life because they were blind. And so when somebody tells them outside of their situation, don't call out to Jesus, they looked at each other, they linked arm in arm and said, oh no, I ain't missing my moment. I got a miracle opportunity right now. I'm gonna shout all the more. I don't care who hears me. I don't care who sees me. And some of y'all need to understand, there's some days that you're paying attention to that you don't need to pay attention to. But if you just got in the right corner and you just got around the right people, Alex, come here, and you just got some people in your corner. Him and I joke all the time, and you guys see it about us dressing alike, looking alike, doing everything together. Because here's what I know. That we both understand our brokenness. And there's gonna be moments in my life that there's gonna be louder days out there that are gonna tell me, no, you can't do that. No, you shouldn't do that. No, you know where you came from. You know where you can't go. And they're going to say a lot of things. But when I'm down and out, there's a guy that's going to link arms with me and start to say, no, it's time to shout. It's time to worship. It's time to praise. And when things happen in his life and haters start to call, I'll start to say, don't listen. We got a mission. We got a vision. You need to start to pay attention to who is right next to you. It doesn't matter if they're perfect. God's not looking for perfect people. He's looking for people to partner with on this mission for miracle moments to happen in their life. These two blind men overrode a large crowd because they believed this was their moment. Do you believe that this is your moment? Yes. Do you really believe that this is your moment? Then listen to what Jesus says next. They get Jesus' attention. He stops them, and Jesus' response to them is what? What do you want? What do you want me to do for you? Pause. Do you know what you want Jesus to do for you? Because we can jump and shout and I can get you all emotional real quick because I'm a very passionate communicator. But if you don't know what you want Jesus to do for you, you'll miss another miracle moment. Because they stopped Jesus on his journey and they had to be prepared for one question. And that one question was, what do you want me to do for you? So I ask you that today. What do you want him to do for you? What do you want Jesus to do for you? And I challenge you, write that in your notes. Put that in your phone. Text the person that is willing to partner with you and say, this is what I'm wanting Jesus to do for me. So they answered, Lord, they answered, we want our sight. And here's how the text goes. And Jesus had compassion on them. The word compassion is one of my favorite words in the text because what it really means is not a feeling, but a feeling so strong that it moves you to action. You can't have compassion without action. It is literally a movement of the bowels, almost like a stomach cramp that pulls you in. What this word tells us is that Jesus sees their pain. He feels their pain, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to change their pain. He has compassion on them. He is moved with compassion. Jesus had compassion on them. I need to encourage you to tell you, Jesus sees your pain, even though you don't see that he does. He feels your pain. He feels what it's like to be deficient in the area that you feel you're deficient in. And he wants to do what he can to change your situation. So Jesus had compassion on them, and he touched their eyes. People ask, okay, we started this whole story. I'm stuck on the side of the road. How do we get unstuck? You haven't said anything. I've said a whole lot. But I wanted to bring you some steps of how to get unstuck, and honestly, it's a whole lot more simple than I tried to make it. You want to get unstuck in your life? It starts with a request. They requested what they wanted Jesus to do in your life. You're stuck. You haven't asked for help. Make a request, a specific request. They didn't say, I want healing. I need you to fix my eyes. It didn't stop at a request. It then connected with a personal relationship. Like, this is stuff I hear all the time. Yeah, it is, but you need to let it sink in. Because it says that Jesus touched them, which means he got in proximity with them. You only get in proximity of people that you have a relationship with. This imagery shows us that Jesus engaged in their space. Jesus wants to engage in your life, but you've got to request it and then allow it. What do you want Jesus to do for you? And are you willing to let him? And then it says, and immediately, This is not a miracle process. This is a miracle moment. Immediately, they received their sight. But that's not where the story ends. They received their sight and did what? And followed him. These guys were leaving the city of worship. And they were going to Jerusalem, is what the next verse tells us. Do you know what Jerusalem means? The city of peace. The city of peace. I know in our stories right now, in the news, there's not a whole lot of peace. There hasn't been peace in that city for some time since Jesus left. But it means the city of peace. They were leaving a place of worship, hoping to get to a place of peace. How many Sundays have we left a place of worship, hoping to find peace? How many Sundays have we left a place of worship where we've acknowledged that God is going to do something in our life, or that God is able to do something, and hoping that we would find peace? Well, how did they get to Jerusalem? Let me pause. These are blind men that have never been on a journey. These are blind men that can't see the road, don't know the directions. If you're going somewhere that you've never been before, what do you have to do? I heard it over here. Follow somebody that's been there before. The reason why you haven't seen lasting change in your life is because you refuse the easiest step, and that's following Jesus. Jesus is the only one that can get you to peace. Jesus is the only one that can make your situation unstuck. Jesus is the only one that'll fix your relationship, that'll fix your circumstance, that'll fix your family, that'll fix your inner frustrations, your anxiety, and your depression. You're like, this is all hoopla. Nope, it's written out well. I know it in my life. I've got plenty of stories that know it in their life. The only way you will find peace in your life is not by seeing Jesus, not by getting a miracle done by Jesus, but by following Jesus. They followed him. How do you follow Jesus? By leaving everything behind. Too many of us come on a Sunday, we drop things at an altar, and we go right back home and pick it up. My prayer for you today is that you would be unstuck, that you wouldn't find yourself on the side of the road, stuck for very much longer, because you found somebody that knows the pathway to peace. And the pathway to peace is through a relationship with Jesus, and only through a relationship with Jesus. And he willingly wants you to come. He willingly wants you to follow. But the question is, will you? I'm going to ask you to stand. I know I've gone long today. I don't get an opportunity to come up here, so I throw everything at you that God's speaking to me while I am. And I'm glad that you stayed with me. God's doing something. You know, I try to ask myself, how do I illustrate following Jesus and what that should look like on a daily basis? And the only analogy that I could really come up with is I played sports growing up, and one of my favorite sport was basketball. And I wasn't a great shooter. I was a pretty decent point guard, but I was known for my defense. It was. I prided myself on not allowing people to get away from me. I started to think about that today when I said, man, how do we follow Jesus? Some of us want to follow Jesus from too far of a distance. And we wonder why the devil gets by us. Because we allow too much gap in between. Cam, come here. Somebody needs to see this thing. When I defend, Cam, come over here. When I'm defending somebody, the larger the distance between us, the less effective I am. Because the more distance here, the more opportunity for distractions, for movement, for challenges, for him to get by me, because there's more space. And some of you wonder why you can't see the peace that Jesus wants to bring you. Because when you're trying to follow Jesus, you're trying to do it at too far of a space. because you're scared of the they, and you're scared of what people would think, and you're scared of what people would know. Well, I'll take this, but I won't take this. You think it's a buffet. And we wonder why we're ineffective in following Jesus, because there's too much space in between that allows the devil to create distraction and frustration and anxiety. And we wonder why. I'll tell you how to be an effective defender. My coach taught me, I stay on his hip. No matter where he wants to go ahead, move. Go ahead, move. It doesn't matter where he wants to go. The furthest he's gonna go from me is an arm's length distance away, because I know my job is to keep proximity to the one who's supposed to score. Listen to me when I say this. You have come to church too often, and you have left with a distant relationship with Jesus. The only way that change happens is if you grab him by the hip and say, I ain't letting you go. I'm not letting you leave me, because where you go, I'll go. What you do, I'll do. And somebody here today, thanks Kim, needs to know that that is what following Jesus looks like. Wake up in the morning and say, where are you at, God? When you get to lunch, where are you at, God? When you get to the afternoon, where you at, God? I want to be right there with you. I ain't got things figured out. I don't know what my life's going to look like. I don't know what the journey 10 steps down the road is, but I know today my job is to be at your hip. My job is to be in proximity with you. And today I know this is true, that somebody wants to take the next step in following Jesus. Not from a distance. You've heard about him before. You've prayed a prayer before. But God forbid, it's not about a prayer. It's about what you do after you hear the words. What you do after you hear the words. Because these blind men weren't the only beggars on the side of the road, but they were the beggars who heard the same things and did something different. Your life changes today because you do something different. Can I pray over you?